So fellas, last night we had UFC Seattle, which was actually an amazing fight night. Obviously, some controversy in the main event, but from start to finish, amazing fight night. We're going to be matchmaking every winner from the prelims and every winner and loser from the main card, and I'll put the timestamps on screen now if you want to go to each fight. And we'll start off with the first prelim winner, which was Modestas Bukauskas. Got a great knockout over Rafael Sakara on a 2-fight winning streak by finish. And I said this in the breakdown yesterday, he's kind of had a career resurrection of Modestas Bukauskas, and I think he should take on Dustin Jacoby for his next fight. I feel like these two, I mean, listen, the light heavyweight division is a very shallow division. I know there was 3 light heavyweight fights on this card, but it's a very shallow division, and I feel like Modestas Bukauskas versus Dustin Jacoby could be a good fight where the winner can get a shot in the rankings. I feel like now that Modestas Bukauskas has picked up a 2-fight winning streak, both by way of finish, and Dustin Jacoby just knocked out Vitor Petrino, they're both in a very good position where they don't necessarily deserve a shot at the rankings just yet, but they're both very close to it. They've both just, delivered stunning knockouts. So Modestas Bukauskas, Dustin Jacoby, I think this could definitely end up in a finish as well, considering that Modestas Bukauskas seems to be much more high-paced and Jacoby's a very dangerous striker. So Bukauskas, Jacoby, winner gets somebody in the rankings, maybe an Anthony Smith, even though I think he's booked against Zhang Mingyang, or just somebody in the rankings for them next. Great fight, and obviously it has meaning to it. So Modestas Bukauskas versus Dustin Jacoby. And then for Nursultan Ruziboyev, he got a great knockout, but he got it over Phil McConaughey, so we can't really celebrate it too much considering the quality of the opponent is all the way in the bin. So I think he should fight Gregory Rodriguez. I think this would be such a banger in the middleweight division. Ruziboyev, who's a bit of a prospect jumping up and down weight classes between 185 and 170, he's delivered multiple great knockouts in the UFC. He knocked out Bruno Ferreira, the guy that knocked out Gregory Rodriguez. He had not a close fight, it definitely wasn't close, but he had not that bad of a performance against Joaquin Buckley, and he just knocked out Phil McConaughey. Gregory Rodriguez was once a big middleweight prospect, just got finished by Jared Cannonier, he's going to have to fight down. I think it's the perfect fight. Again, one of these fights that there is no way this goes the distance. Not a chance. Gregory Rodriguez being as dangerous as he is early on, and Ruziboyev just being as dangerous as he is in general. There's no way this fight goes the distance. I think this could be a really good fight. Ruziboyev versus Gregory Rodriguez. This is one of those fights that you'd see on a card. It might be like a prelim headliner for like a pay-per-view. It's one of those fights you'd look at and you'd be like, holy shit, this is a banger. This is the fight of the night. This is going to be, this is going to get a bonus. So Ruziboyev, Gregory Rodriguez, Ruziboyev fighting up, Rodriguez fighting down. It makes sense. Then we've got Austin van der Voort, got a good finish over Veretikot. I can't even say his name, and I don't even need to say his name because he's no longer in the UFC. He should be taking on Tim Means. I know this might look like a bit of an easy layup for Austin van der Voort, but the guy's 36 years old. He's had 1 win in the UFC. Let's not rush him. Let's not rush his run. I think Tim Means is an easy win anyway. Tim Means just got absolutely ran over by Court McGee, another old veteran. And Tim Means probably has like a fight or 2 left until he gets cut from the UFC or he retires. So I think this just could be another good fight to give Austin van der Voort that UFC experience against a UFC veteran. An extra fight under the bright lights, maybe like the Apex or something. And then we can start talking about Austin van der Voort against the bigger fights in the welterweight division. But for now, van der Voort, Tim Means, I think that makes sense. And then we've got Ricky Simon, delivered a stunning knockout, quite possibly might be the best finish of his career so far against Javid Bashrat. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be calling for the rankings. Previous to this win over Jared Bashrat, he was on a 3-fight losing streak, and all 3 of those guys that beat him, apart from I think Mario Batista, are no longer ranked. So I think we do Ricky Simon versus Davy Grant. Davy Grant kind of goes under the radar in the bantamweight division because he's this old guy. No one really takes him seriously, but you look at his record. He gets through nearly everyone, and you look at the people who he lost to. He had a very close loss to Daniel Marcos, a very close controversial loss to Adrian Yanez, and apart from that, he's having a fight of the nights, and he's absolutely walloping people. So I think Ricky Simon versus Davy Grant could be a banger of a fight. I could definitely see Ricky Simon going out there and clipping Davy Grant, but it wouldn't surprise me, especially if you look at the previous losing streak of Ricky Simon, if Davy Grant was able to pull off an underdog win against Ricky Simon. I think this is another kind of similar fight to the Bukauskas fight, where the winner of this fight can then get a shot in the bantamweight ranking. So Davy Grant, Ricky Simon, 2 walk-forward fighters who are always in fight of the night. Well, not always in fight of the night, but always like to bring it. I think this is another banger of the fight, and it makes sense as a step up for Ricky Simon. And then we had Mansour Abdul Malik. He got a good win, I guess, but it wasn't anything super impressive over Klein. Got wobbled in the first round, and for a lot of the fight had to deal with grappling problems, so it wasn't an extremely good performance. I think we give him Eric Anders. I think this makes a lot of sense. This is, in my opinion, the perfect step up for Mansour Abdul-Malik. We're giving him a step up in competition because he's just fought a contender series guy, and now he's facing a veteran coming off a win in Eric Anders. But we're not giving him somebody too high up to the point where it's like unrealistic to give him it in his third fight in the UFC. Very winnable for Mansour Abdul-Malik. I think if he can take Eric Anders down, he's toast, and I think he would be able to do that considering how bad Eric Anders looked against Chris Weidman. But for Eric Anders, if he can shut down the prospect in Mansour Abdul-Malik, beating Weidman, a veteran, and then Malik, a prospect, back-to-back, wouldn't be too bad. So a step up in competition for Abdul-Malik, but not too big. Could be Eric Anders. And then we had Melquizael Costa, had a really good finish over Andre Fili. Fili stupidly shot a takedown, got himself in a bad position, but just throughout the entire fight, Melquizael Costa looked good. I want to see him versus Mohamed Naimov. Mohamed Naimov obviously suffered that really bad loss to Felipe Lima, and it feels like since he lost to Felipe Lima, he's been getting wins, but he's not been getting super dominant wins. Like he beat, I think it was Khan awfully in his last fight at UFC Saudi Arabia, but he didn't do it in extremely impressive fashion. So I think Melquizael Costa versus Mohamed Naimov is a great fight. You put these guys together, two guys that are always on the front foot, two guys that are very well-rounded and could take the fight anywhere and ace there. And I think the winner of this fight could really make a case to say that they get a shot at the rankings, or at least close to the rankings in the featherweight division. So Melquizael Costa, Mohamed Naimov, two guys that have suffered wins and losses in the UFC. I think that's a perfect fight. And then we had Ian Q Talaba headlining the prelims, fraud checking Ibo Aslan. This might seem like a bit of an unrealistic matchup, and you might think I'm rewarding him too much, but hear me out. Azamat Mirzakhanov. Now, I understand Azamat Mirzakhanov's on a winning streak. He's undefeated. He's ranked number 12, I think, in the light heavyweight division. Why the hell would he face Ian Q Talaba? Well, I don't know if you know this, but Azamat Mirzakhanov is going to be out for some time because he popped for steroids a couple of months back. And usually when fighters get popped for steroids, he doesn't go unpunished. And I'm not saying we're putting him in a terrible matchup, but I don't think Mirzakhanov, after popping for steroids, deserves to fight anyone highly ranked. And he's super inactive anyway. So I think we give him Ian Q Talaba. There's a very high chance that Mirzakhanov, and he probably would, goes out there and absolutely wallops Q Talaba and finishes him early on. Or maybe he doesn't when he's off the steroids, who knows. But I think this is just a good fight. I think Q Talaba, now that he's on this 2-fight winning streak, him versus Mirzakhanov could be a good fight where there's no way it goes the distance. It's very winnable for Mirzakhanov, but at the same time, it's kind of punishing him for taking steroids, whilst also giving Q Talaba a shot at the rankings, which I don't think anybody ever expected. So, Ian Q Talaba, Azamat Mirzakhanov, I actually think as of right now, this fight makes sense for when Mirzakhanov's back. And then for the loser of the main card, Julius Walker. Normally when fighters debut in the UFC and get finished, I'll tell them to, well, I'll just say they don't deserve to be in the UFC. But Julius Walker, despite it being a bit of a boring performance, he didn't do bad against Alonzo Menifield, considering that Menifield's ranked. So I think for Julius Walker, we give him Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute's in a really weird position in his career, because I really do think that Jimmy Crute would wallop Julius Walker, but after looking at Jimmy Crute versus, I mean, look at his past couple of fights, Jimmy Crute. I think he was on a 3-fight losing streak, and then he just recently had that draw with Rodolfo Bellator. Even though he's a talented guy, he's Jimmy Crute, his career's not going his way right now. And I think Julius Walker on a full training camp could actually be a problem for Jimmy Crute, because he didn't look too bad against Alonzo Menifield, a ranked fighter who've actually finished Jimmy Crute himself. If you give him a full training camp, I think this could be a super competitive fight between two guys that are kind of fighting for their UFC contract. I think the loser of this fight would definitely get cut from the UFC. I don't think the UFC would give Jimmy Crute another chance if he loses to Julius Walker, and if Walker goes 0-2, he's probably going to get cut as well. But Julius Walker versus Jimmy Crute. And then for Alonzo Menifield, he's in this tough position. He's probably one of the worst ranked fighters in the UFC, but I guess he is coming off a win, so we've got to give him somebody ranked above him. Maybe you just reschedule him against Umar Saad, but I think Johnny Walker could make sense. It's winnable for Menifield because of how explosive he is and how chinny Johnny Walker is, but it's also a very, very winnable fight for Johnny Walker, because if he makes it out the first round, he's going to absolutely piece up Alonzo Menifield. So from Julius Walker to Johnny Walker, I would make this fight next. I just think it makes the most sense from Alonzo Menifield's current career perspective, because, again, I don't mind the idea of him fighting outside the rankings, but I don't know. I don't think this is too bad of a matchup. And then for the next loser of the main card, we had Melzik Baghdasaryan suffer a bad knockout loss to Gene Silver. Very bad knockout loss for Melzik Baghdasaryan. I think him versus Bogdan Grad could be a fight that makes sense. Bogdan Grad's another kind of weird, chaotic fighter like Gene Silver. I'm not saying he's as weird, but he's also a bit of a weird fighter. And I think coming from the Contender Series, getting another win recently at UFC Saudi Arabia. He wants to fight open. I think a good test for him could be Melzi Baghdasaryan. So that's the fight I would do for Baghdasaryan. And for Gene Silver, I was originally going to do him versus Calvin Kattar to get him in the rankings, but considering that he just called out Bryce Mitchell, I actually think that's a really good fight. So let's do it. Gene Silver versus Bryce Mitchell. This fight, I mean, the lead up to this fight, if this was on like a pay-per-view, the press conference, the weigh-ins, this would be like, I don't even know how to describe the build up to this fight. Two of possibly the strangest fighters in the UFC right now, the weirdest personalities. Guys who were somewhere on the spectrum with a couple of missing chromosomes fighting each other. I do feel for whoever loses this fight because I don't know what state their mindset's going to be in, considering how, you know, mentally challenged they already are. But as a fight, I think this makes a lot of sense. It gets Gene Silver into the rankings. I don't know if the UFC are trying to punish Bryce Mitchell for what he said on Twitter. I don't think they would do that, but I think I could definitely see someone like Dana White doing that to Bryce Mitchell. I mean, he did beat Kron Gracie, but at the end of the day, it's Kron Gracie. I like this fight anyway. He called him out. Let's do the fight. Gene Matsumoto lost to Rob Font, but had a really good performance. I think we give him a big fight, Gene Matsumoto. I said this in the breakdown. I think because he performed so well, I don't think we give him somebody in the top 15, but I think we give him a respectable and well-known name. And the perfect guy to fit that criteria is Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt versus Gene Matsumoto. This is a perfect fight in my opinion because Cody Garbrandt's obviously been out for over a year now, or coming up to a year now, when he lost to Davison Figueiredo at UFC 300, and he's kind of just sat there in the unranked area of the bantamweight division, not really doing much. And for Gene Matsumoto, he proved that he's definitely top 20, top 25 best bantamweights in the world. I actually think he was only he wasn't far from winning that fight against Rob Font. So I think we do Gene Matsumoto versus Cody Garbrandt. It's winnable for Gene Matsumoto, and he probably would win this fight, and you can use Cody Garbrandt to build the name of Gene Matsumoto to give him some momentum and then get him back into the rankings. And for Cody Garbrandt, if he can beat Gene Matsumoto, that's a massive win. He's just beat a huge prospect, and I think that would be great for Garbrandt. So Matsumoto, Garbrandt, I would do next. Stop constantly scheduling Cody Garbrandt versus Miles Johns. And then for Rob Font, he's on a 2-fight winning streak now. I have to say we run him back with Marlon Vera. Now, I get the first fight wasn't really competitive, and Marlon Vera completely pieced him up, but they're at two completely different career stages right now. Marlon Vera can't seem to win. Rob Font's on a 2-fight winning streak. I think it makes a lot of sense. Vera's been looking terrible recently, and I understand the competition has increased, but he got dominated by Sandhagen a few years ago. Absolutely battered by Sean O'Malley. Figueiredo was styling on him, and he's been out ever since. And Rob Font's just picked up a win over Kyler Phillips and Gene Matsumoto, two up-and-comers. I say we give him an opportunity to right a wrong. And him versus Marlon Vera, fight night main event in the Apex. Vera versus Rob Font. I think it would probably be a much more competitive fight this time around as well compared to the first. Maybe it wouldn't, but either way, it would be a banger of a fight, or at least it'd be a dominant performance from one of them. And it makes sense considering where they're at, where they're at now, because I mean, who else do you really give to Rob Font? He's coming on a 2-fight winning streak, and he's lost to nearly everybody ranked above him. And the only guy that's really coming off a loss that makes sense would be Vera. So I'd do Rob Font versus Vera. And then for Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen's talented, but I mean, he's just inferior in every matchup that he goes against. So I think for Brendan Allen, we're giving an unranked fighter, but I think this would be an absolute banger. Brendan Allen versus Rainy Derrida. Yeah, Rainy Derrida's got to get an opportunity to fight in the middleweight rankings. Submitted Gerald Mearshot, submitted Kevin Holland, called for somebody in the top 15. And I think Brendan Allen, who, I'm going to be honest, listen, I understand he's talented and everything, but who has he really beat? I don't think he's beaten a single ranked middleweight right now. No, he hasn't beaten a single ranked middleweight right now. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Let's welcome in another heavy grappler in Rainy Derrida against another heavy grappler in Brendan Allen. Grappler versus grappler. I think this makes a ton of sense. It's a very winnable fight for Brendan Allen because I'd say he's definitely better on the feet, and he would probably win this fight considering how Rainy Derrida looked against GM3. But if Rainy Derrida can beat Brendan Allen, that's a big one for him. It gets him in the top 10, and that would just be a huge opportunity. So Brendan Allen versus Rainy Derrida. And then for Anthony Hernandez, he's up there now with the likes of Nasty Mimavov and Caio Borralho. He's in that new kind of area of the top 5 of the middleweight division, in my opinion. So I think we do Anthony Hernandez versus Robert Whittaker. I think this makes a ton of sense. Hernandez is a bit of a prospect now in the middleweight division. A lot of people are bought on the hype of Hernandez because of how good his grappling is. He's on, I think, a 7-fight winning streak with 6 finishes. Just beat Brendan Allen, Roman Kopylov, Michelle Pereira, 3 ranked fighters back to back to back. He's now going to be in the top 10, and I think Robert Whittaker suffering a bad loss to Khamzat Chimaev. He's going to have to fight down the rankings, and the only real options for Whittaker at this time is like Roman Dolidze or Anthony Hernandez. Hernandez has 10 times more the hype, it's 10 times a better of a fight, and you can also test Whittaker's grappling. You know, we just got mauled by Chimaev. How would he do against another heavy grappler in Anthony Hernandez? If Hernandez can beat Whittaker, that's a huge win. It gets him in the top 5, and he's up there, like I said, with the likes of Imavov and Barallo and the other guys at the top of the middleweight chain. So if Hernandez wants to break into the top 5 and Whittaker wants to step down in competition to get some momentum, Hernandez versus Robert Whittaker, let's book the fight on a pay-per-view sometime this year. I don't know when Whittaker's going to be back, but I'm hoping he's going to be back at least in the later half of this year. And then for the main event, Henry Cejudo decided to quit in the main event. Listen, I'm not saying the eye poke didn't affect him at all, and I'm not saying there was nothing going on with his eyes, but it did seem like he was looking for a way out, and he ended up looking like a fool because he ended up losing the fight. Now, initially I was going to say Henry Cejudo should retire, but I think the perfect fight for Cejudo would be Mario Batista. These guys might be 2 of the most disliked guys in the bantamweight division, and they need to redeem themselves. Cejudo just quit against Song Yadong, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he's urgent of a win. Mario Batista just beat Jose Aldo, but he did it in horrible fashion, and in disgraceful fashion. These guys are 2 of the most disliked guys right now in the bantamweight division. The 2 most disliked guys going at it. Cejudo fighting down after a 3-fight losing streak against an up-and-coming Mario Batista on a winning streak. I think this fight makes a lot of sense. It's a winnable fight for both of them. Batista, they're both fight in a very similar way as well. Like, they both like to push forward with grappling, but they also have like a quick, heavy striking style to do that. So I think Cejudo versus Batista could be a fight for Cejudo, and if not, just retire from the sport. And then for Song Yadong, he's coming off a win over Cejudo, and he was winning that fight with Cejudo anyway, even though he technically was a technical decision and it wasn't like a trademark winner stamp on the nail, whatever you want to call it. He is coming off a win, and I think a fight that makes sense is Song Yadong versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I always thought the winner of this fight should take on Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar, he's got 1 ranked win. He beat Corey Sandhagen by decision, and then he goes out there and loses to Merab in his first title opportunity. He's now going to have to fight down in the rankings. Song Yadong just got an impressive win, and I feel like Umar, we need to put him against some bantamweight contenders to see how good he really is, because, like I said, he beat Corey Sandhagen, but outside of Sandhagen, he hasn't beaten anyone, so we need to give him some guys, and I think Song Yadong, coming off a fresh win over Henry Cejudo, looking great, could be that guy for Umar Nurmagomedov. I heard rumours of this fight taking place previous to Nurmagomedov's title shot, but now that Umar's coming off a loss and Yadong's coming off a win, Song Yadong, Umar Nurmagomedov taking each other on, I think makes all the sense in the world, and I think it's a good opportunity for Song Yadong to potentially break into the top 5 if he can get past Nurmagomedov, and if Nurmagomedov can beat Song Yadong, then boom, he's back in the title picture. But those are my matches that I'd make after UFC Seattle. Let me know your thoughts on these fights, if you agree, disagree, if you like the fights or not, and thank you for watching.